Welcome back, Winers. My name's Amanda Lopez with Transform Consulting Group, and you are joining us on our Wine About Data podcast. Today, I am joined by a special guest. And Kathy, it's not your first time being on the Wine About Data podcast.
Had to
But
come back.
in case this is the first show that our listeners are hearing, please introduce yourself and talk a little bit about who you are and your background in the nonprofit sector.
Wonderful. Well, again, thanks for having me. I'm Kathy Gatchell. I work at the Honeywell Foundation here in Wabash, also known as Honeywell Arts and Entertainment. I've been their Chief Development Officer there almost 20 years.
Wow.
And then I spent another 10 years prior to that at what was then called Manchester College, is now Manchester University.
Yes.
And have just been in the nonprofit universe my entire career, and specifically fundraising for nearly all of it.
Yeah. You just have such a wealth of knowledge and information, and I'm so grateful that you've agreed to join us on the episode, and we can just tap into some nuggets of your brain as being a professional fundraiser with just all this great experience. So today we are planning to talk about end of year giving. You know, we're entering that last quarter of the year, and so if anybody's in the nonprofit and does fundraising, you know that this is a really important quarter of the year, and we're going to talk about why. But before we get into that, what are we drinking today? Because it is about the Wine About Data. So I picked out this Kendall Jackson and it's Grand Reserve Chardonnay. So let's give it a try, Kathy.
Okay.
Cheers.
Oh, cheers. Sorry, I was rushing it. That is really good. I'm not always a Chardonnay person, but that is really good.
Yeah,
I like
do
it.
love Kendall Jackson Chardonnay. I know it's like a big wine label, but it's a pretty easy Chardonnay. But regardless of what is in your cup, whether it's a glass of wine or a cup of coffee or water, we hope that you'll just pick up whatever you're drinking, relax, and join us as we talk about end of year giving and why this is such an important time of the year for nonprofits. So, you know, as you know, Kathy, you know, the data kind of shows that anywhere between like 17% up to 30% of a nonprofit's funding can come in at the end of the year, even that last month of the year. Right? I mean,
it's almost, you know, it's like Christmas every day, it seems like, for a while there. It's very exciting.
Yes, it is very exciting. It's the equivalent of like the Black Friday for retail merchants. And so, you know, for nonprofits, it's really where you're going to make your budget, hopefully, or exceed your budget goals for the year if you're a calendar year budget. And, you know, part of maybe like, let's talk about why is it? Like, why does it have to happen to be like the end of the year? I think there's that sense of holiday spirit and holiday giving. People do feel sometimes more generous and wanting to contribute to causes. And then, of course, there's the tax benefits and liability, right?
Yeah, I think that is, you know, historically been one of the main drivers, is that people wanted to make sure they got their gifts in, you know, before the end of the year. And, you know, over the last few years, there's been some changes to the tax law, which there was a concern that perhaps that would change or disrupt how people would give. Would they bundle up their giving? And there has been some of that. But at the same time, if people are committed to your cause, I know we have found still pretty just steady giving, regardless of what those tax laws are. We have a whole brand new set of tax laws getting ready to go into effect in 2026. And there's a lot of really great opportunities actually for charitable giving. And it's actually one of the things that I would highly recommend folks to do, is to really become proficient in those laws, because if you can advertise that and let people know about, like, hey, you're giving, you know, regardless of your tax situation, is going to be deductible, because, you know, that's part of one of the new opportunities in 2026. And so it just creates that additional incentive for someone to be supportive.
Absolutely. I think that's such an important and helpful tip, because it can be intimidating. I mean, it's a lot of financial jargony and, you know, sometimes legalese jargony. And so if you have somebody on your board that has a financial background, can help you talk through some of those changes and understand the law and what those different implications are, that would be great. If not, find an advisor in your community.
Yes. And, you know, just there's a lot of great information, like webinars and things like that. Obviously, here in Indiana, we rely pretty heavily on the Indiana Fundraising School. That's a great resource of information. You don't want to just take anything, because you want to make sure it's
valid,
correct and truthful, but that's always a great place to start for some of that information. And you don't have to become a tax accountant by any means, but just being able to understand and being able to kind of talk the language so that you can help your donors be that much more generous. It's just a helpful thing
Right, because there might be things they don't even know that they could do.
Mhm.
They want to give to you, they want to support the cause, and if it benefits them and their financial situation,
Right. Why
all
not
the
make it,
better.
yeah, why not make it a win-win? And
Right.
there's lots of other vehicles besides just, a straight cash gift, whether it's appreciated stock or, it used to be donor advised funds were
Yeah.
only for maybe people of a certain wealth, but
Right now,
now lots of people utilize donor
they
advised funds,
do.
or they utilize them with their local community foundation.
Yeah.
And again, don't be intimidated by this language, because it's a great way to really engage and have a conversation with your donors and perhaps unlock some increased donations, because perhaps they could do a little bit more if they did it through this vehicle
This
as
method.
opposed to just a straight cash gift. The other one, of course, is the qualified distribution from someone's IRA as they get to be of a certain age. But again, many times that might create an opportunity for a conversation for perhaps a larger gift, because
Right.
this is something that's going to help this person in their tax burden. And then in turn, it helps you and your organization.
Yeah, absolutely. So now is a really great time to try to reach out and become familiar with some of the changes that are coming, but opportunities that are already underway as you gear up for your end of the year
Yes.
campaign and promotion. And I think, in the last few years, and I should have looked this up, but now there's this new Giving Tuesday opportunity, which is such an incredible opportunity for the nonprofit sector.
It is. And, when it first started, it wasn't necessarily as big as it is now. And it has really become a
Huge.
National phenomena, the same way, it's the Tuesday after Thanksgiving, you got your Black Friday and your Cyber Monday and Giving Tuesday.
Yeah.
And it's a great way that even if you don't have a really organized campaign, maybe you're a one-person shop and you've got lots going on, and how can I do one more thing? Well, it's pretty simple. Like, there's a Giving Tuesday, database, and you can just kind of plug into some of those materials and then adapt it to your organization and be able to utilize that same language. And at Honeywell, what we've done in the last few years is we've really used that as kind of a launching pad for the end of year giving. So we talk about Giving Tuesday, but we really create a campaign then for the entire end of our calendar year, just using that as kind of a punctuation to be like, hey, you probably are hearing all about this. Well, here's our message. And oh, by the way, it's going to be relevant all year long, to the end of the calendar year. And so.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think, historically, a lot of nonprofits would at least send out a mailer. Right. You want to get something out that last quarter, to maybe your whole contact list or whoever it is that you're targeting. And that was a pretty traditional method and tactic I think most nonprofits would use. But now with the launch of Giving Tuesday, it's really provided an opportunity to, as you said, expand upon the end of year giving. I think too, it can tap into new potential donors. As you reach more.
It's become, it is so big that it is a little bit of a crowded marketplace. That's the one, it's the one caveat with it.
Right.
But it can allow you to have, this talking point that perhaps you didn't have previously. And I think it allows you to continue that conversation then, whether it's, my recommendation would just not only have it be start and end only on Giving Tuesday.
Right.
Use that as the thing to catch attention, and then utilize that to continue your message and talk about your mission and tell your story, so that you continue to be relevant. Because maybe Giving Tuesday will hit the person at the right time, and maybe it's going to be the second Tuesday after that. So making sure that you still have that information in front of them so that they can see how your mission, your story can help transform, the world to a better place, and how they can help.
Yes, you used our tagline, transforming the world.
There you go.
Thanks, Kathy, for that plug. But no, seriously, back to that, because I think that, makes a lot of sense. And I wonder, from your experience at Honeywell, like, what does that mean to start earlier, right? Because best practice would be not to wait until Giving Tuesday, which this year is December 2nd.
Right, it's late.
So, how do you kind of start to ramp up? Because while it's top of mind for us in the field, it's not for everybody else.
Correct.
And who knows if that person's going to be on social media that day and the algorithm is going to show your campaign and their feed. They could be a follower, but still it's, out to the Facebook gods, right?
Yeah. Planning is everything. And so you need to make sure that you're not just putting everything in one basket. So you need to make sure that, yes, you have something ready to go for Giving Tuesday, but looking at the calendar and making sure, like, okay, does Giving Tuesday this year work for my mailer? Or perhaps I need to do it early. Maybe I need to do it in early November to kind of not be a part of all the clutter of the year end. So you really have to kind of see what works for you and what might work best for, your constituency. It's, as I said, it's a great opportunity, but you kind of have to customize it within what works best for your organization. And again, what works also with the calendar itself, because if it does fall late, you don't want to wait till, we're going to do it all then. And then, don't give yourself enough time to really make sure you get all of your solicitations out.
Absolutely. It's timely because Kathy and I are on a board together. That's how we have gotten to know each other, the opportunity to be on several local nonprofits, and we're on our local Main Street organization board. And we were just talking about gearing up for our end of the year campaign, right? And, I think some of the key things which are applicable to many nonprofits is, one, we had to figure out, okay, we need to update our website. Are we making sure that our donate button is working and it's really visible and easy?
And it has the benefits that we absolutely are going to promise. And, we can deliver on those things.
Right.
I mean, that's one of the number one things you have to do is you have to make sure that everything that you're, saying is how you're going to do it. Because the worst thing you can do is say you're going to do something and then you don't have the follow through.
Not follow through.
So definitely, making sure all your systems are ready and up to date. And so that you don't want to find out by accident but they're not.
Right, because if we're going to be pushing something out and have a lot of eyes there, we want to make sure it's ready to go. So I do think there's some good prep work that everybody can do. And then we also spent some time thinking about, okay, if we're going to launch this maybe in early November, so it's like the whole month leading up to it, what are the messages? You don't want to just say give.
Absolutely.
Right.
It's all about your case for support. I mean, it's just always and again, I mean, it's something that's kind of a drumbeat that you hear from nonprofit professionals, your case for support, because that's what it is.
Right.
You have to know why someone would want to make a gift to your organization. You have to be able to deliver that message of like, when you give, this is what happens.
This is the impact.
This is the impact. This is the outcome.
Right.
And you are part of that. You're the key ingredient to make that happen. You're the fuel in the engine. We might have the people on the ground to make it happen, but without this, we can't make it happen.
Right.
You're the key to the success. And so you just have to really know that, message and be able to just, repeat that elevator pitch, as they say, over and again. And for most nonprofit leaders, that's not a problem because you believe in your mission. That's what likely is why you're working there.
Right.
You're so kind of like filled with that mission that you want to see that outcome. So that part should be easy, but just making sure you have clear ways to communicate that.
Right. Absolutely. And like you said, it's going to be a crowded market, right? I think the data that I saw last year was about $1 billion came in on Giving Tuesday.
The giving keeps increasing. Now, when you look per capita, there has been some ebb and flow, but overall the giving is, some people get discouraged sometimes about whatever, data point you see out there, but actually philanthropic giving is alive and well, doing really well. And you just have to make sure that you have your message out there and be able to connect with donors to give them the opportunity to support you. And that, people have always joked with me, like, I don't know how you do fundraising. I don't know how you ask people for money. It's a gift, really, because people do so because they want to, because they believe in what you're doing, and they want to be a part of it.
Right.
Why would you deny that from them? Why wouldn't you provide that opportunity to make sure that they can be a part of that happiness and success as well?
I love that because, that's what nonprofits are all about, right? We're all, they're a cause-oriented organization. There's a clear mission. There's a clear need that you're meeting in the community. So you just want to tell that story. When folks see that passion that you have and they see the opportunity to be a part of that, that's what a donor is. They're joining your cause and helping to support you because they believe in that.
Right. Right. It's in the end, I once was at a conference that said, no one got rich by giving their money away. It's not, people don't do it for other, they're doing it because they truly believe in the work and what you do. And so being the best storyteller you can be is just key to the success, whether it's year-end giving or throughout the year, but definitely at year-end to make sure that you can really tell your story and demonstrate to people why you're worthy of that support.
Yeah, I think just circling back to the Giving Tuesday, some other tips that we were talking about earlier, is especially like setting a goal.
Yes.
Because it is a crowded market and we do want to create a sense of urgency. We want people to give today. And so one of the great ways to do that is to try to find a match.
Yes, we've
right?
done that for the last many years. We've secured a match, and what's been exciting
Yes.
is we've had success, and so every year we kind of up the ante. One year was, I think, a $10,000 match, and then the second year I think was a $25,000
Wow.
match. Last year we had a $50,000 match. Now, again, we didn't extend it just on
that
the
day.
Tuesday. We did it then for the whole, end of the year. But it creates this excitement. So in addition to it being, a great kind of a point for somebody to focus in on, it's exciting to be a part of that. So it's a great additional incentive. We talked at the beginning of this podcast about the tax incentive. There's lots of different reasons, that
people
kind of play
give.
into it. But this is a great additional incentive to get people to be like, yes, now's the time. I'm making my gift.
Right. Especially when you have that opportunity there. And I
Correct.
think, the storytelling, weaving in the stories of individuals, having some testimonials, along with, again, that core data that talks about the impact, the value that you bring in the community can really make a winning campaign. Well, I know, Kathy, we could spend like the rest of the day talking about end of the year giving, because it's certainly top of mind for both of us right now as we're entering this season. But what would be, one tip, start here for a nonprofit as they think about end of the year giving?
I think it's that storytelling piece, like figure out what's that core piece you want to convey. Because chances are you probably do lots of things. You probably do lots of things really, really well.
Yeah.
So, and that sometimes is hard to convey when to be like, we do these 10 things. So what's kind of the key thing you really want to, relay? Because as we've talked about, it is a crowded market. There's lots of messages. People's attention spans have gotten smaller and smaller. So how do you make sure that people hear your message and get it somewhat quickly, so that they can understand, like, this is who we are, and or that it's just compelling enough that they want to, I want to know more. I want to keep digging in further, but making sure you have that key point of being able to really demonstrate your cause, your story is by far the number one thing you should look at.
I love that. And we had a whole episode about storytelling, and especially how do you use data to tell your story. And I think one of the best ways to test your storytelling is to share it with a partner or a friend, somebody who doesn't work with you, because they can be your litmus test.
Because it may make all the sense in the world
That's
to you.
Right. That's right.
But perhaps it doesn't quite, the clarity isn't quite there when you're trying to do it in a larger marketplace. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. Well, I'm excited to see how end of the year giving goes for Honeywell and hear what your new goals are that you're setting for this year and for the boards that we're on.
Yes,
and
all the way around. I
helping us all meet our budget.
For all of us.
Well, thank you, Kathy, for joining us today. As always, you just have a wealth of information. We could talk for hours, and I know that if I'm fortunate enough to have you back, so we can expand upon some of these key topics here. Well, Winers, thank you for joining us today on the Wine About Data podcast. There have been a lot of great resources that Kathy and I have talked about, so understanding some of the new donation tax laws that will link some of those. Also, we have some helpful blogs and articles about Giving Tuesday and end of the year giving to help you ramp up for your end of the year giving success. And if you haven't yet, we encourage you to follow us on Transform Consulting Group's website. You can go there to sign up for our newsletter or follow us on social media. And of course, you can subscribe to listen to our podcast and hear when the new and latest episode releases. Well, I hope that everybody is going to have successful end of the year giving. And thank you, Kathy, for joining us. Cheers to you and all the great work you're doing in our community and the region.
Cheers.